For a dinner, say, and one so TVGH, and dinner so TVGH. I was just one subscribe channel, subscribe, not like it. No one comment and one share the mouth for on your beard. I share, most of for Alaska. And Madima Kunya, yeah, Madima Kunya. Metia, me brap, Mr. Bona, Mr. Kojubona, ya wo, a year, Canada, Abruchimem, Metia pa, Metia. Brap and is also US, Nana say, Nana says, I'm a friend. And I'm a chairman, and one support to autonomy. I dear ye paying us with Chomina, a pepe. We did some more ye, one pair, I'm one more going to ready with fee, one pair at time, which said, rather, one quatent to Mamma Hortin to find the Moya Bia. Asantema's Chamuna, Asantema yet shall be Bia, your support to autonomy for Asantemazo, a chamo. I was young for a year coffin, ye co a year, Crobia Santa Cotoco, and I read in a day bush Yakuyuki, Abruchimem. Ye ko UK abrochimem eye kotoko hene eko UK abrochimem eye Scotland University eko sra school no ko sra school no chese efeye budwa ede ji papa iso oluma so ji papa so ye na ya de nyina kotoko hene nyam kese ede ji no so na efe papa obi ohun kotoko dade wo sie man Christmas wo hwe kotoko no o efe busia efe pa efe yi entino abusia ye gbebohwi na ya bowura aye UK Scotland University hono no na akwakohwe eye de course wo ho kotoko hene bedu ho ne me course wo no akwakohwe na yaba eye ba be di nko kakra bi e de asoso ne ye de abe awiye enti abusia before say wakwakohwe dwumadie no wow pesa ubodwuma de hu da Europia pesa oba advert we advert ma product bia no fa number ye atwagu na fa fresh OT4 office na ye ni nkomo ye bebo am ya promote advert bia pesa promote be promote ma kama e wo so TV dwuma de so ai fresh here wow pesa we try live streaming we try ye where dey from bia pesa we try for live streaming bia so fresh so OT4 office na ni nkomo ye bebo am ya twa na ya ye kama e de am so edini ye so TVGH ndika gonya subscribe no like no comment no one said the amount for us on your bed ahwebi yenko Scotland University ho UK abuchi ne yenko hwede e course wo Otumfuo Osei Tutu nyamkese krowura honom nemra e ba bidi nkom kakra bi amam you abusuafo eye monigusu amohwe eye so TV so TV ngusu amohwe na hwe mfoni etwagu ya eye kotoko hene emra afre ofiri Ghana eko eye abrochimem UK visit eno na anana mahemfo wasantema hemfo mu nyina besala binu mabija ebija kotoko kwan amana ede wako na wo so mo sala wo fe enyefe ti ya ni yehwe no f kama ahemafo ahemfo eno wasala kama mo twen aye kurura na aja wodo modinkra ansana wo mo akọ
take good care of yourself for us. Your grandchildren are proud of you. I know many people wish you death because of envy and witchcraft, but it won't succeed. Thinking of chiefs and ignorant people who speak against you reminds me of your greatness as a king. Even when faced with insults from jealous chiefs and foolish individuals, you remain committed to providing solutions for Ghana without regret. You were born for this, Nana. Truly born for this, Otumfuo.
Kuruwa ne bano, kuruwa ne yiti wo bano, yes. Yes, kuruwa na bano, Allah. Yes. No. Kuruwa no. Na abusunya efe asante obika, asante obikire pa, asante obika pa. Enyefe. Oluman esi form no ne feye wa hwe ikuti di papa ikuti obo yam kese ukutu fatao papa dressing there what dressing you can't dressing him for the what dressing papa what dressing pa easy ne fe no chia bant mahina chia no ahemfo akanyina gusu na chia na kama efe sirikire obi a ochia obi a wiansa na okotena ne private jet na de ne akọ so what you say efe keke efe asante manza na ya di ye hene ye say nyame no si nyame no wo ye dan ye si nyame no nyame kese no kotoko kurura nyame kese nti no asante de ya de man ya ko nti ye si ye pe autonomy ma asante ma yo hwe hi autonomy ma asante ma den abusia fo f de na f chense na na akra wo ya akra wo wi ya so woko ni na hun ko tukura fata no wa she ananya nkwada YouTube ahini mahini ya kono papa santama ya wadiu wade papa yedi no nyame som nyame no bibia no sikedwa mo ho ban ma mo hini nche wa blabu maye ne ne hwehwe afiri sikedwa ne nananom mansamanfo nyina ho se mo nkwatenten freedom po nyame mo nkwatenten wo fie 75 years wonya mo mruso enkosa pepe dru ho so ya ochia ona de omrebe nante no ne feye papa Luan, I mean phone calls from you, I mean phone good dress, I mean phone call Pia what can I say? There's a F Asante wadi you my plain air crown. I plain air crown. It's a paper now, it's here. Kuduru yeso a hoso so feso so ya jeni feso gidi obia wihia no efe muri train to aso ko yomoko efe keke visit video obwa serious visit pa visit ndo obwa kra obwa efe ti ko hene na ekura no okura no kwa mvanko pia benifo ba bedru fie train the train na Babylande pepe bi mo ba no mo si form efe si form kama ti abusia Otumfuo Osei Asante kotoko na visit ye UK Scotland University bi ho no no videos na twagu na wo hwe bi no nti tokoso na hwe ni mo bisi bi ho waso ate pepe pia na timpia bi akatachie na timpia bi ne yese nyampa mawo opuno kwa da bampu bi emie se kwa bi emie me be kwa ko hwe ahini
Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. Kinsolomon Safwe, Mango and Bio Adisio. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. Kinsolomon Safwe, Mango and Bio Adisio. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. Kinsolomon Safwe, Mango and Bio Adisio. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. And Sabia Pana, the woman already be a visio. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. Kinsolomon Safwe, what in Trodo. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. Kinsolomon Safwe, what in Trodo. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. And so we are going to know what in Trodo. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. And so we are going to know what in Trodo. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. Kinsolomon Safwe, woman go any bio visio. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. Kinsolomon Safwe, woman go any bio visio. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Ayanya Safata Siana said to trouble you. Kinsolomon Safwe, woman go any bio visio. Oponga Baba, the Bamprum Bemie, Siapa Bemie, maybe Bakoraine. Nanaya no Asante, what is your Fred Mo? Nanaya no Asante Tutu, what is your Fred Mo? Nanaya no Asante, 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 don't go. Nanaya no
Otumfuo Osei Tutu, any kitchen for sorry. The man Otumfuo about to St. Andrews, and then a handful of penny for Mukan Honda. There 8 months ago, and I go to my name said, I'm over school. I'm more program there, only actually a center. Otumfuo so they attach you, I can see. I mean, what I say, and we share our program. I say, about St. Andrews, and Saturday, the principal and Cramps are friends, and also will be in school. It's the Cram about the war. Me shall say, to this year, I'm already 10 years. I say, Otumfuo attach you, and I'll catch you school. Now, to Otumfuo. The Keynote school, there is Keynote, Scotland. So I see my since last week, I mean, Otumfuo Osei Tutu Otumfuo Osei Nda Otumfuo Mudin by Nancy so and you can see my especially brother over school but school now before anything before in the more school St. Andrews. I remember her first time I was surprised at school and before English I don't say, Uncle, we have to change it. These were his exact words to me. Uncle, we have to change it. It was starting Africa Summit here 4 years ago or 3 years ago. President Suzuba Hasi to tell me the African company for Obama school who said, Africa Suzu, on between the account, and so the account on my check. Yeah. Emma Bradley. Aka program now, you hold the next 3 days. Yeah.
Who bought my neighbor? You were home and I probably had a conversation and also.
You might see, think about each other.
I want to be. We will go with someone and so on the money in our house. We said, Tom to say, free run and once in a ma. I would debate a band if you say, I didn't mean to say. So, Francisco can say now, and I'm a woman necessary to say, Rasumacasa, but you must be cut. Nobody saw their mind like a simile. I bring Pong, come home. I said, the dominant Jabba. He said, you know, on my end said, because I Saturday 2 night and I dominant at the number. And once in a Mayura, and we have the Hunano. Oh, no, how do you rain? You are by a something suffering the man by.
Otumfuo Chairman. Yeah, that's very great. They say, Emma, Brad. Actually, the next 3 days, program, Yashisha, I'm out Otumfuo.
I was also say, I said that on that one, so I don't know what we're doing now, what we're just reviewing.
To speak in English, properly. Otumfuo, Nanano, members of the executive team at Minchia, and all here gathered. I welcome you once again to St. Andrews, Scotland. As my uncle has said, this is my alma mater. This is where I went to university as an undergraduate. And I established the St. Andrews Africa Summit almost 10 years ago to deliberate on African affairs here in Scotland. And it's now grown from power to power, strength to strength, and by God's grace, it's now the leading African conference in Scotland. So I thank you once again for honoring our invitation. And without further ado, I'll just run through, it's on my phone, the program for the next 3 days. So as has happened by God's grace, today, Thursday, 14 September, Otumfuo has arrived. We don't have any formal program for today. We'll give you all the chance to rest and get familiar with your abodes. Tomorrow, Otumfuo will be playing golf at 10 a.m. at the Ealing Golf Course. I believe I received a list from Mr. Seche as to who will be joining him for that. It's only +3. He will then return back to the estates for lunch and to freshen up, followed by a tour of the World Golf Museum, which will be facilitated by the Royal Nations Club. Now, the Royal Nations Club is the custodian of the game of golf. As you may be aware, I know a lot of you are golfers here. Golf actually originated in St. Andrews, and so they are the body that is responsible for regulating golf, and they've agreed kindly to host Otumfuo for a tour and some discussions at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Followed by that, Otumfuo has gracefully also accepted Ambassador's invitation to dinner. So there will be a dinner at King's Barnes Distillery, which is one of our whiskey distilleries here in Scotland. If you know anything about Scotland, golf, whiskey, those are our expertise. And so we have exclusive use of the venue, and Otumfuo and his guests, 19 guests, will be there, followed by a small reception for everybody else to join as well. After which Otumfuo will come back home, and then on Saturday is the main program. Otumfuo will meet with the principal at University House, which is her official residence, on Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. He will then come back to the estate and then go to the university for his official address at Lower College Hall. On the way to Lower College Hall, just at the entrance, we have a small flagstone which the university has in my name, and we'd also like to present that to Otumfuo to have a look at that on his way into the venue. Followed by that, Otumfuo will come back for lunch and refreshments if he wants to change or anything like that, ahead of sitting in state at the same venue at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and then the program will be done. So that's it for now.
I share, especially Bradley. The president of school, I said, if you say the wireless, maybe when I never come and discuss it, I think it's one of the first Asantes to go through St. Andrews. And that's Asante will be a image. Otumfuo a senior friend. One slot a bit media Asantehene for St. Andrews every year. It's in the society and it's in because we'll be a wine. See how we can also make it work. Let's say for Ghana, really for Asante. For chairman, last night, I'm betting myself. I could say, you done a number of quarters and ramen in the buy to bring on the easy for Emo. I'm out playing money in nowhere. This name because in Nigeria, you know, it's H. Okay, so I done it. Edinburgh, I'm so free Edinburgh, which you are today. Free. Come as make a program, and so two program now. The best was so as why or why champagne balloon now, I'm also a sponsor.
Obey. Well, bring them up to the moon and Sasabo, and on the fruit plate, seminar. Oh, that's what I said, you're Nigerian, so now all bring pots. So, say one in the channel, only one of them say, bring balls over the that's what so much will come with this. That's the yes, I feel quite over me now as Falcon. So, they should be now. Soon be a one of them now. Wouldn't is a mess with now, and that's like I say, among all the becomes. It's small.
I'm saying, money. We are ready friend, I'm a friend. One point for one to order was a Munyamutre. And they said, TSC, yeah, almost intended to see. So I see them as if
Well, it's a very man way.
Chairman, I also wanted to take the opportunity to introduce my director for this year, Majesty Otumfuo. As I said, I started this organization as a student, and after graduating each year, we've had a council of students who've taken responsibility for this summit. And this year and last year, Madeleine was the one who did so. So, with your permission, I'll allow her to introduce herself to Otumfuo.
So, we said it on ourselves. So, what the opinion of the people, let's show. All right.
Yes. So it's very important to me that you know how incredible this opportunity is, not just for myself or for the Africa Summit, but for this university. We've not been able to bring in anybody from outside of the UK for our summit since before 2020, and for when the President of Ghana came to our summit. So this is incredible that we're finally able to bring in people again, and the fact that it is yourself is even more exciting. Beyond just that, I come from a very small town in Connecticut in the United States. There's mostly just trees, and nobody imagines meeting anybody of your caliber or of your status. So what's been incredible about posting this event all over social media, has been not just the reaction from students and from community members here, but all over the world. Anybody involved in this, their friends from back at home, their family, they all are asking, how can I come and meet the King? How can I come and watch this event? So my family is in town. One of our family friends traveled from Switzerland to come see this. The excitement that you've generated is massive. So not only do I want to thank you, but I also would like to welcome you in a way that is customary to where I come from. So I left Connecticut a couple years ago with my family. We're now living in South Carolina. And one of our favorite new traditions that my mother has probably taken to an extreme is the tradition of giving welcoming beads to anybody who comes into our home. So on every door in our house that leads outside, we have a set of welcoming beads. That is a custom that began when, unfortunately, slavery was brought to the South. But what that meant is that Southern cultures tend to have a very diverse mix of people coming from all over the world. So our welcoming beads have a historical background of Afro-Caribbean influence. And what they are, they have an oyster, which is symbolic of Charleston, South Carolina, and the exports that usually come from our area. And the beads, which are symbolic of creations, yes. So they're all over our home, and I wanted to extend them to you to say thank you. Welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And have you had time to really yes. We were very pleased with Christian Thank
you also for receiving, when my office received the invitation, and then my president also said, look, I was there in 2020, so you have to, definitely remind me, you have to go and apply.
Oh, that's
why we're here. So it was more like having to meet the young ones and talk about Africa, and for people to appreciate where Africa is, what can be done and all that.
Yes.
And also to embolden them also after their studies to come back and help in the development of Africa.
Yes, and that's very important, and I agree with you that embolden is absolutely the right term, to raise their aspirations and raise their sights. We all think that is very important.
Especially with the university with over around 40 nationalities.
That is correct, yeah. We are a remarkably international university in a very small town.
Yeah.
Just 3 streets and 140 different nationalities.
Yeah.
I believe you may also be aware that you are visiting us during a very special week in St Andrews, where we've had the wonderful announcement this week that we have achieved a historic double first, that we are top of the 2 major league tables. That's right, we have displaced them from the status quo. We're all very proud, aren't we? Yeah. And we were just saying, I was just saying to your colleagues that that sort of disruption of the status quo is a good thing. It makes everybody think, it raises aspirations, and it makes everybody think that we can all do that bit better.
The Guardian has coined stock split.
I should tell you, Your Majesty, that I actually have a sign saying Stocksbridge above the door into my office now. Yes,
But then that goes to your leadership anyway. Congratulations also for that, because since you took over Breakthrough and what you've done to achieve this reflects what your capacity and your ability to steer this. Because now, from what I read, your students now are very positive when they go out.
They are extremely. That is absolutely correct, Your Majesty. They're very positive. They go out to a wide range of different types of employment, and they're confident. We like to think that the culture here produces students who are inquiring and curious and confident, but they're also global citizens. They know they have social responsibilities as well. It shouldn't all be just about the individual. We try to develop that culture of mutual respect.
Right. Well, that's good. And, my first secretary, who was with my brother, who I succeeded, also was a St. Andrews student. Yawandom.
Is that right?
Yes, he was. Yeah, and he was so proud to talk about St. Andrews in Kumasi.
Oh, that's excellent to hear. Well, we appreciate those traditions.
And when people talked about university, he was proud to say, "I went to St. Andrews, and it's one of the best universities in the UK."
Now the best university
Now
in the UK. Yeah, we're very proud of these achievements, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, and I think we have alumni in 150 different countries around the world, and it means a lot to all of them. And we've been inundated these last 2 days with messages of congratulations and support, and I think our alumni are so proud of being part of the university. For some, they've been kind enough to say it's not a surprise. It's been inevitable.
Oh, that's good to hear. It doesn't always, in my position, doesn't always feel it. But when it happens, I'm delighted that people say
Well,
that.
sitting in front of you is one of my paramount chiefs, and is the chairman of the Council of State. That is the highest body that advises the president.
I see.
And he's the chairman. And with me also is the chairman of my university council, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And so he's here to talk about collaboration anyway.
He's very interested in pursuing these opportunities for collaboration. There are some smudges and a number of institutions and universities in Ghana, but it would be good to arrange something at higher.
Train a lot of our youth.
Yes.
And it's already made a mark, but as His Majesty rightly pointed out, we are only 70 years old. You are 600 years old, but we can exchange and then we'll learn from your varied and wide experience. So we'll look at the areas where this will be possible, and I think take the process forward.
Well, I think the learning experience would very much be a mutual one. Although we are 600 years old plus, we always take the view that we learn from the other institutions that we partner with. We have a range of very valuable collaborations across the world, because you mentioned the science in particular.
And then we've looked at your computer science program is one of the best. So that's another area where we can look at.
Okay, that is absolutely true. Gareth is our Dean of Science. I'm sure he would testify.
I would agree. It's excellent, and I think it's trying to reach out to more people as well with a digital offering present. So I think, as the principal said, we benefit a lot from the diversity of folk that come to us and that we interact with. I think that's, as I said at the beginning, we have so many different nationalities here, both in staff and students, that we want those different views. And I think
so as soon as we get that, we'll initiate.
Yes, exactly. I think that would be valuable.
That's right.
And one of the things, as Gareth mentioned, one of the things that we are starting to develop is online digital programs. But we are very much taking the view that our university is associated with very high quality. That's one of the reasons we rank highly in the league tables. So there is quite a challenge when you move from in-person courses to online and digital, because you don't want a diminution in quality, so that actually it's just like watching television or watching somebody, just talking into a computer. So we are working very hard on our online programs to ensure that they have that individual feel to them, that they're individually curated, so that it's not teaching en masse, but rather making sure that everybody who participates feels that they understand what their development is. For that reason, we're rolling out our programs and piloting them quite slowly. But we have started in the area of data science, where we're just recruiting now, and I think that's going very well.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, we'll take it up. I think one of the unintended benefits of the pandemic
Yes.
has been that it's
online.
online. Yes.
So
we'll take it up.
Yes, I do agree with you. I think it has been one of the unintended benefits, but the important thing is that we don't stay in the immediate world of the pandemic where we all just rush online.
The wholesale.
Yes, but clearly you understand the quality and excellence are our hallmarks. So
I think whilst you're doing the online, there could be visits also from lecturers here coming down to supervise.
Yes.
We're starting to think about those sorts of possibilities that can be additions to these kinds of programs. So, because I think what we want to keep, as the principal said, is the quality and also what makes St Andrews special, which is some of those interactions. So I think we need to hold on to quality.
That's marvellous. Well, we'll make sure that we exchange details and pursue those kind of connections. That would be excellent to undertake.
I think we would extend an invitation for you to come and visit.
Thank you. I would greatly. Well, it has to be. This is very much a mutual thing, and that's really been part of our history since we were founded in the 50s. People often think that the Scottish universities took a model from England, but I have to tell you that that is wrong, Your Majesty. Yes, that has always been that argument, and that goes right back to the 15th century. The models on which we drew were those of France, outward-looking European, and then more extensively international reputation of the university after that. And that's one of the reasons why I hope our students impart that culture. And this, of course, extends to, Gareth is, our staff are also from different parts of the world. You can probably hear that Gareth is a New Zealander.
I think I've come from as far as possible to St Andrews.
And it was only when the wreckage from the fire was re-excavated that they found the flags, and they were in the cupboard wrapped up in newspaper. So they date to end of 17th and early 18th century. So these iron club heads. So because the courses were much less manicured in the 18th century and 19th century, it meant that they had to have these iron club heads to get the ball out of rough furrows around. That's why they had to. And they damaged the balls very easily as well. When they were playing with feather balls, they were easily damaged.
These are the balls?
And these are the feather balls, some of the examples of feather balls. They were very time consuming to make, and very expensive to make, that they damaged easily. So when the Dutch commercial ball was introduced, it was much more durable. And then it was discovered with the Dutch commercial ball that if it got nicked and little dents in it, the ball actually flew further, which is why it resulted in the dimples being created and manufactured and playing around with different designs. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Well, and they were really pioneering. So we founded the League founded in 1894, and that very same year they organised and ran a national championship and also introduced a handicapping system. So they didn't waste any time getting started, and that was the really start of the handicapping system that is used today. So this is what the women played in. So this was that's what the women were playing. So there's very, very strict rules around etiquette and what we think for women to wear in the golf course. And so they wore these long haired skirts and heavy jackets. And then round here, so a women golfer called Gloria Lake. And then the captain's golf, so that's what the So this is an example of the clothing that she designed. Huge ocean liners. The rolls in So shows the evolution.
about soldiers perished on the man's land.
And then of course different sizes as well. Discussions between the RD and the USGA over the size of the golf ball, which has been something that's taken place throughout history. But they've always tried to allow you, and sometimes they haven't.
A new era.
His mentor,
once again, this game's suspended.
Because I'm the golf ball and Tom Ward started playing but they were a formidable
Time to rebuild, we knew the storm. Oil fans and sun, wind, or rain.
So then
Never feel constant.
artifacts from lots of different players who have come here. We can have a look at some of the others as well.
As the years rolled on, players across the globe would flow with fans. Championship established.
They were all won by James Braid. So there was a triumvirate of golfers, James Braid, J.H. Taylor and Harry Harvey. They were all competing at the same time
Magnificent victory.
Braid and Taylor won 5 Open Championships. Barden won 6. And Tom Watson came very close to winning 6 September in 2009. But we're very fortunate to have which really started from the mid-1700s. Sometimes it was along trading routes, sometimes it was the military who were posted overseas, and sometimes they set up very rudimentary golf courses and made very basic clubs and balls to play with. Some of those courses were built in a day so that they could take their sport with them overseas. So this is an area that we're really developing as well, and over here there's a World of Golf section where you look at how golf is everywhere, how it's become a really global sport, and how important it is culturally and historically.
The kingship.
So this is the museum. I hope you've enjoyed your tour.
care of. Can't spoken.
I'm sure he's going to play golf.
Yes. You've now converted me.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Sometimes my first game will be here on Fernando.
It's all about the old course.
Okay.
Are these for sale?
We may have some in the shop, yes.
Ready for the next speaker.
Just go across the road, get a couple of pictures, okay? No, actually, it's I and his sister.
Yes, please.
We'll give it to him.
Kevin, can you take your next
We just took over a few months ago. I decided to bring him so that we could talk to you about development of coffee. Why have you abandoned us? Tell me everything.
Well, I'd like to think we haven't abandoned you, but as we were saying going up the road, the relationship had got a bit quiet. So you'll know that there was the investment into Achimota, which Tullow Oil put in, and we put some money towards a director of golf development in Ghana. I think it would be fair to say that things didn't quite work out the way we wanted them to. So we were kind of hanging back a wee bit. But now Mike Agri, who is the former president, I think, of the GGE, Mike has been speaking to us a number of times. So actually just last week we kind of spoke to Solomon and others at the GGE and asked them to submit an application for some funding. So we've received an application. We will provide some funding, probably go towards the provision of playing equipment, and that will just start the conversation going again. It would be fair to say, despite being a big golf organisation, we don't quite have as much money as people may think. So our sole source of income is the Open Championship. So everything that we get comes from that. And we have over 160 national federations that are affiliated to us around the world who are all looking for our support. So we would like to do more. The hope is that we can do more because we're trying to raise more money, but the support may be fairly modest, and particularly at the start as we start to re-establish that relationship. But definitely there's that intention to have more dialogue, start speaking, and it's not just about the money and the funding, it's about
the technicals.
Yeah, the expertise.
Bana be ya bodio, adese prekode saswe ya bodio shimbi ya mumienken kume, yenken kwa bana be ya bodio, ajoba mango kofunye ya bodio shimbi ya mumienken kume, mumienken kwa bana be ya bodio, ajoba mango kofunye ya bodio shimbi ya mumienken kume, yenken kwa bana be ya bodio, anabwachi na mebe ya bodio shimbi ya mumienken kume, mumienken kwa bana be ya bodio, anabwachi na mebe ya bodio shimbi ya mumienken kume, yenken kwa bana be ya bodio, esampe na mebe ya bodio shimbi ya mumienken kume, mumienken kwa bana be ya bodio, ajoba mango kofunye ya bodio shimbi ya mumienken kume, mumienken kwa bana be ya bodio, ado brama gogo funye abodio sembe menjen kume ye kankwa bana be abodio anabwachi na mebe abodio sembe mumyenken kume mumyenken kwa bana be abodio anabwachi na mebe abodio sembe mumyenken kume yenken kwa bana be abodio esa pena mebe abodio sembe mumyenken kume mumyenken kwa bana be abodio esa pena mebe abodio sembe mumyenken kume yenken kwa bana be abodio anabwacha bepetio mwe abodio sembe mumyenken kume mumyenken kwa bana be abodio anabwacha bepetio mwe abodio sembe mumyenken kume mumyenken kwa bana be abodio asena nanganya sinye abodio sembe mumyenken kume mumyenken kwa bana be abodio asena nanganya sinye abodio sembe mumyenken kume yenken kwa bana be abodio anabwacha bepetio mwe abodio sembe mumyenken kume mumyenken kwa bana be abodio anabwacha bepetio mwe abodio sembe mumyenken kume yenken kwa bana be abodio anabwacha bepetio mwe abodio sembe mumyenken kume mumyenken kwa bana be abodio anabwacha bepetio mwe abodio sembe mumyenken kume yenken kwa bana be abodio ogwa kuni kanchenie abodio sembe mumyenken kume mumyenken kwa bana be abodio ogwa kuni kanchenie abodio sembe
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very special event. I am delighted. Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, the 16th Asantehene, along with several esteemed Asante chiefs, Nananam, and others, members of His Royal Majesty's administration. I will welcome His Royal Majesty fully to our university in just a moment. However, first I would like to share with you some details of today's event and express our sincere thanks to some of the people here who work hard to make this summit such a success. The St. Andrews Africa Summit, SASM, is an annual event focused on Africa and African diaspora, coordinated by a dedicated team of students here at the University of St. Andrews. SASM is designed to introduce African affairs to our students, inspire them to find out more about Africa's historical ties to the Western world, and encourage a desire to participate in the continent's future. Today's summit is particularly significant, as this is the first event leading up to SASM's 10-year anniversary this spring in 2024. Since it was founded in 2014 by Bradley Poku Amankwa, from whom we will hear more very soon, the summit has gone from strength to strength, welcoming such luminaries as the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Leymah Gbowee in 2015, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana in 2020, and Dr. Louis Franceschi, Assistant Secretary General of the Commonwealth in 2022. The university is extremely grateful to Madeleine Penino, the director of SASM, and everyone on the SASM committee who has worked so hard to make this event such a success. I'm told that the level of enthusiasm and collaboration from the student body has been nothing short of amazing. Thank you, and well done to you all. In his founding of SASM in 2014, but also in the extraordinary efforts he has made to bring this event to fruition today. Please join me now in expressing our sincere thanks to Bradley. It is now my huge pleasure to welcome our very special guest, His Royal Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II. His Royal Majesty was installed on 26th of April 1999, and since then has become renowned for his transformational and inspirational leadership. He has received many accolades, including the Pillar of Peace Award for his visionary leadership in restoring peace in the Kingdom of Gabon in Ghana, from the Africa Premier Leadership Awards in 2020, the Chartered Institute of Marketing Ghana President's Special Award in 2019, and was bestowed with an honorary degree from his alma mater, London Metropolitan University in 2006. As a founder and patron of the Otumfuo Osei Tutu II Foundation, he has expressed his clear passion for educational development and the power of education to transform lives. His dedication to education in Ghana is also demonstrated by his role as Chancellor of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. The wider aims of the Foundation have much in common with the themes of the University of St. Andrews strategy, which looks to place our 600-year-old university on a strong footing for the future. Entrepreneurship is one area in which we share a focus, and the Foundation's Otumfuo Entrepreneurship Challenge plays an important role in nurturing the next generation of Ghanaian entrepreneurs. His Royal Majesty is also known for his environmental vision. In 2019, he announced the planting of 2.5 million trees around Lake Otumfuo to protect the water bodies of the Asante Kingdom and preserve the land for the next generation. This is yet another area in which our goals align, with the St. Andrews Forest Project forming an integral part of our commitment to becoming a net zero university by 2035. Finally, On a personal note, I'm told that His Royal Majesty is rather keen on golf. Another topic you can learn a lot about in St. Andrews. I sincerely hope that your visit to our town and university demonstrates how much we have in common, both on and off the fairway. So with such distinguished speaker, it seems we are for an outstanding address today, and we have much more to look forward to during this afternoon's reception and formal sitting in state ceremony. However, for now, please join me in welcoming His Royal Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II.
Otumfuo Osei Tutu. O Asantehene Kasangei. O Asantehene Kasangei. O Group Media to Preva de Nefa Otumfuo Osei Tutu Chemebra.
Let me begin by thanking the St. Andrews African Summit and for that master the university for the kind invitation to deliver this distinguished keynote address for this year's edition of St. Andrews Africa Summit. The last time I delivered such an address at the University of Cambridge, it coincided with the university overtaking its traditional Oxford rivals for the first spot in the university rankings. I am happy to note that this time round, the University of St. Andrews had broken the duopoly of the Oxbridge colleagues and leapfrogged them to take first spot in the rankings. Well done to the Vice Chancellor and the University for continuing your success continue. Your Africa Summit initiative underscores your commitment to the continued study of Africa, both academically and as a challenge to the evolution of human development. The continent presents a study of immense importance to our generation. Only a few days ago, the African Union, representing the 57 independent states of the continent, was admitted into the G20, which until now has been the club of the global rich. Whether this was an exercise in window dressing or a significant step in the process of global development, only time will tell. But at least, the move underscores the point that Africa can no longer be taken for granted. The imperatives of global peace and harmony require rethink both within the continent and in the larger global community about our place in the global family. We face the incontrovertible fact that Africa has been badly served by past history. Our history has been distorted, and we have served periods when even our very humanity has been challenged, even crucified on the cross of Hegelian intellectual. Our generation now has the obligation not to whine and complain, but to stand up and challenge the distortions of the past. We hope great institutions like St. Andrews, through a forum such as this summit, will be part of the quest for the requisite positivity, rationality, and integrity in the study of African affairs that will be conducive to the emergence of a new climate of harmony. It is the reason I'm here, to share our thoughts on traditional leadership in the modern democratic society. The last century was arguably the defining century of the continent of Africa. The preceding century had been, for me at least, the century of humiliation, when the entire continent was carved up in an orgy of colonialism described as the scramble for Africa. The first half of the last century was an extension of the preceding one, with all but Ethiopia, Egypt and Liberia under foreign control. The second half of the century, however, saw the dramatic change in the circumstance with the political emancipation of the whole continent from colonial subjugation. It will seem obvious, therefore, in considering the modern African democratic society, that the starting point would be the post-emancipation era, approximating to a little over the last half century. Unfortunately, I fear that will only paint a hazy picture of traditional leadership in Africa. For a fuller picture, we need to leap back in time to be able to feel and appreciate the evolution of traditional leadership across the continent through different epochs. We should examine a snapshot of traditional leadership in the epoch before the European invasion and consequential colonization. Then look at the role of traditional leadership during the epoch of colonial rule to provide the context within which one can fully appreciate the role of traditional leadership in our modern democratic society. It has become the burden of our generation to challenge the historic injustice meted out to our continent through the inhuman characterization of its inhabitants, our forefathers, as some subhuman species who needed to be dragged into civilization. As a corollary to this endeavor, attempts have been made to decapsulate the continent by pretending that the nations of the north, such as Egypt, are not of Africa at all. Such is the prejudice and the hate that since the power of Egyptian civilization cannot be denied, they must construct the subterfuge that no such civilization could come out of the so-called dark continent, and therefore Egypt cannot be Africa, should be of Africa. And yet whether you believe in or deny the existence of God, you cannot deny the existence of Africa as one continuous continent. Its landmass stretching from the Mediterranean north to the Atlantic south and from the east to the west. In such a vast landmass, there is bound to be, like all other continents, great diversity in outlook among its population. And yet, of laying such differences are the multiplicity of languages, is a commonality of cultural organization and compelling evidence of the existence of African civilization in every part of the continent. Assuming there can be no denial of the reality of the civilization of Egypt and ancient Carthage in the north of Africa, we will move to the south of the continent where the promoters of apartheid had sought to eliminate every grain of African humanity. Even here, neither the impact of the Boer War nor the horrors of apartheid have succeeded in obliterating the magnificent organization of the Zulu Kingdom or the kingdoms of the Swazi. They were before the European invasion and they are to this day models of traditional African statehood. Move on to the heart of the continent, the territories of Central Africa. Here lies the Congo, possibly the greatest victim of colonial savagery, still suffering the travails of a tortuous evolution. It was in April 1885 that the Belgian Parliament granted authority to their king, Leopold II, to assume the position of head of state of the new African possession of the Congo. He was not to be simply head of state, but the parliament stipulated that affairs of Congo would rest in the 50s of the last century. As the flame of African nationalism burnt bright and the demand for emancipation of the continent reached its apogee, the Belgian government published some magnificent volumes of books designed to sanitize their rule in the Belgian Congo. Between accounts of the horrors inflicted by other European powers that preceded them, the first volume of the massive book published by the Information and Public Relations Office of the Belgian Congo and Rwanda Ruli also attempted to assuage the hurt of the people by relaying some unpalatable truths about their history. After recounting what had been discovered about the origins of humanity in the soil of Africa, the book noted that much of Central Africa had been shrouded in mystery as a result of the absence of any written accounts of lasting monuments. The inevitable question was posed. Must we conclude from this that for nearly 2,000 years, Central Africa, cut off from European progress by the desert and by impassable rivers, saw only unorganized hordes similar to the human heads of prehistoric times? And the authors provided the answer. Not at all. This is an erroneous idea. It is still believed in certain circles where people repeat glibly that until the arrival of the Europeans in the last century, the history of Black Africa is one with prehistoric times. And the book goes on. As a matter of fact, the first Europeans who landed in Africa often found communities that were politically organized. Some of them, under the stimulus of the head of a family, who transformed themselves into a monarch, have even become kingdoms such as the Kingdom of the Congo near the mouth of the river, founded in the 13th century, or the Empire of Luanda on the frontier of Katanga, created in the 13th century. There are many evidences of these Congolese monarchies. The very first explorers from Portugal pointed out that the natives there were more civilized, and although they had not yet acquired writing skills as had the empires of Benin and Timbuktu in West, The political structures closely resemble the feudal organization of Europe in the Middle Ages. In fact, the king had divided the country into provinces and districts, at the head of which he had placed delegates chosen by himself. However, in certain cases, there were already popular elections, a kind of democratic counterweight in embryo opposing authoritarianism. There were rather highly developed techniques. The castle of iron and copper was known. Also, the art of pottery and the weaving of clothes so strong that the Portuguese used it as sails for their boats. Certain animals were raised, pigs, sheep, goats, and also poultry. Moreover, long before the arrival of the Europeans, millet, sorghum, banana, peas, squashes, and yams were grown. Such was the Congo, the official Belgian government publication tells us, when their king, Nzinga Intimo, received the delegate that the king of Portugal sent to him in 1484. Testament to his sagacity, King Nzinga Intimo immediately dispatched emissaries of his own to the king of Portugal, asking for masons, carpenters, agricultural laborers, and missionaries. In short, all the technicians he needed to help him improve the living conditions of his people. This exchange resulted in the establishment of a strong tie between the kingdoms of Portugal and the Congo, based at the start, not on conquest or vassalization, but on an alliance. The two kings, on an equal footing of formality, exchanged ambassadors, and these diplomatic relations continued for many years. King Nzinga Ntimo was succeeded on his death by his son Don Afonso, who continued with his father's quest for the development of the lives of his people. He opened the country to more Europeans and had his son sent to Rome to receive ecclesiastical training, becoming the first African bishop in 1518. Don Afonso established diplomatic relations with the Netherlands, Brazil, and the Holy See, and between 1504 and 1539, he sent 3 emissaries to Rome, insisting on being accorded the same privileges as accorded the King of Portugal. Obviously, his assertiveness was displeasing to the Portuguese, but of greater consequence, King Afonso was indignant about the vices which Portugal had introduced into his country. The Portuguese had introduced alcoholism, extortion, and slave trade on a scale which was destroying the moral fiber of his people. An indignant King Afonso threatened to cut off commercial relations with Portugal if they did not stop. It began a period of turmoil in relations between the two countries, leading to an open warfare against the king Don Antonio and the crushing of the Congolese in the Battle of Impila in 1665. From that time on, the decline of the Kingdom of Congo was swift, crushed by military might, abandoned by commerce which had shifted to Angola, and weakened by the slave traffic. The Congo was reduced to vassalization, and as a phantom state, it was finally dismembered definitely in 1885. Official Belgian publication lamented that the privileges extended by the original alliance between the two states have soon been corrupted, giving way to trickery and violence. And the alliance was transformed into such a vast system of exploitation that in 300 years it succeeded in converting into a gigantic slave market this country which might have known a better fate. The Kingdom of Congo was not the only one in the Central African Basin. The same Belgian Congo book also recounts the story of the Kingdom of Bakabu as perhaps the most ancient of the Congolese kingdoms, certainly the one where African civilization has reached its highest point, and the only one which, frozen in a kind of proud conservatism, had remained at its ancient aspect down to the present day. The Bakuba are said to have settled in their present abode as early as the 6th century. Their history is not so much that of conquest as of the development of an original civilization which organized a social system and sought out its own aesthetics. We are told that a taste for beauty is one of the dominant traits of the Bakuba people. Everything in this country is decorated, chiseled, custom boxes, cup, drums, walls of houses. So much for Central Africa, as narrated, not by some African radical, but under the authority of the Belgian Vice Governor General of Belgian Congo. What do we see in the East? As far back as the 11th century, the Kingdom of Mapungwe was trading with Arab merchants on the coast of the Indian Ocean. The Kingdom of Mapungwe, 1450 to 1760, had overthrown the Kingdom of Zimbabwe circa 1220 to 1450, and was itself defeated by the Osei Empire, which succeeded in expelling the Portuguese colonies from the Zimbabwe Peninsula. In 1838, however, a powerful army of the Shoda clan, led by a celebrated Zulu general, Mzilikazi, defeated the largest Sona-speaking empire, taking advantage of the heightened internal rivalries. British descended on the territory, managed to gain the signature of King Lopungu on a document purportedly granting him concession to mineral rights in the territory. From this flimsy foundation, which will hardly survive any legal scrutiny today, began the chain of events leading to the naming of the territory as Rhodesia and to its eventual annexation as a British colony. Away from Rhodesia, in today's beautiful Uganda, we have the powerful Kingdom of Buganda, founded in 1818 and to this day in total control of its affairs within the Republic of Uganda. Need I tell you about the glory of the Empire of Abyssinia, the glorious Ethiopian Empire, which is the only African empire to have successfully fought off European subjugation. Emperor Haile Selassie may have been overthrown by his own military in our time, but his heroism will forever glitter in the history of our great continent. And so to my home backyard in West Africa. The three most powerful kingdoms of ancient Africa were the empires of Ghana, Mali, and Shonga, all rising in the land stretching from present-day Mauritania, taking in Mali, Guinea, parts of Senegal, down to parts of present-day Ghana. Ancient Ghana began in the 1st century at a time when Europe was in the wilderness by establishing the lucrative trans-Saharan trade route between West Coast and the Mediterranean seas. For 400 years, it maintained a state which, by any measure, was on a par with any European state. Internal squabbles led to the collapse of the Ghana Empire, but the predecessor empire, the Mali Empire, built on the legacy of the Ghana Empire and succeeded in creating what was to be one of the richest states on the globe. In Timbuktu, they built one of the greatest centers of Islamic scholarship and learning, teaching all the sciences, mathematics, astrology, and astronomy, creating one of the great universities in Islamic studies with a library of more than 350,000 books and manuscripts. By the sheer efficiency of organization and management, Mali became one of the richest states of the time, and its most famous king, Mansa Kanka Musa, was regarded not only as the richest man of his time, but is considered by many experts today as the richest man of all time. When Mansa Musa made his pilgrimage to Mecca, the convoy of caravans he sent laden with gold almost sent the Arabian economies into a spin. The power of African traditional rule did not die with the ancient empires in West Africa. Near our time, we've had the kingdoms of Benin, Ile-Ife, and Oyo, and the Hausa Empire of northern Nigeria. And we've had the Mosi and, of course, the Asante Kingdom. Each of these kingdoms, the empires, have evolved through ingenuity of their people, creating institutions of governance and organization appropriate and in many ways ahead of their time. To the extent that human civilization grows from the interplay of forces, there's nothing to doubt the capacity of these kingdoms and empires to grow organically from continued contacts with other civilizations without the trickery and treachery of colonialism. So what became of Africa? As all the continent fell under the yoke of colonialism in the 18th century. As I see it, the colonial endeavor manifested itself through two characteristics. What I will characterize as the Oriental model, that is the French, Belgian, Dutch model based on the quest for assimilation, and the British model based on indirect rule. The policy of assimilation was premised on the proposition that the African was of a lower order of humanity and needed to be helped to rise or assimilate into a higher order, which was the European. It was the offering of the status of a semi-skimmed prototype, a shade above the African but still not good enough to be the full European article. Nothing expressed this absurdity better than the Belgian attempt to abolish Congolese nationality. Recounting controversies about Congolese nationality following the annexation into the Belgian colony, the official Belgian Congo book we have already cited confidently asserted in the 1950s. It is, and I quote, it is the unanimous opinion that Congolese nationality no longer exists. Then, having regard to the existing legal documents referencing Congolese nationality, it felt duty-bound to explain further. It is not a question of a nationality, but of a special status. Since the Belgian constitution provides that the Congo can be governed according to special laws, it can be said that the Congolese are Belgians enjoying a special status. In other words, what distinguishes the Belgian living in the mother country from the Congolese is that the latter are Belgians with a Congolese status. This convoluted mishmash is further expanded as follows. The native population is ruled according to the extent of its evolution, either by the written statutes or by a native statute. The degree of evolution that permits the native to be placed under the written statute is officially recognized in the course of a special procedure. Every Congolese has the right to be registered as soon as he has attained his majority according to the civil code. If he can show by his training and his way of living that he has reached a state of civilization that proves him fit to enjoy the rights and fulfill the duties stipulated in the written legislation. The French may have been less obnoxious and certainly better at managing the process of assimilation, but faced with the countervailing force of African intellectuals like Leopold Senghor, Ahmed Cesari, Albert Camus, determined to assert their own identity, the assimilation enterprise had little hope of sustainability. It thus had to be the British model of indirect rule that is of relevance here. British colonial policy acknowledged the primacy of a traditional governance, and while they did not endow them with the scope of development, they were nonetheless co-opted into the process of governance in a very practical sense. The traditional structure of governance under the direct rule of the chief remained undisturbed at the local level, leaving the colonial civil servants to concentrate on law and order, taxes, and the provision of such social services as education and healthcare as colonial rule would allow. This collaboration between the traditional rulers and the colonial administration served their purpose well, and when, for example, the Gold Coast was cited as a model colony, it was not because Britain had sent in a special breed of colonial administrators. It was because the traditional structure on which the colonial authorities were riding had proven to be that much efficient and effective. But if it served the colonial order well, it will unwittingly open fault lines in the substructure of the edifice of the independent states of the future. For few of the nascent political leaders of the liberation movement fully appreciated the dynamics of the situation their traditional rulers had to navigate. Conversely, the traditional leaders could not by themselves fathom how the relationship between them and their once loyal subjects would change in the emerging political environment. As I have argued elsewhere, it left a trust deficit in relations between our chiefs and our nascent political leaders, which had a negative impact on the constitutional arrangements by which the countries regained political independence. For example, the British managed to accord special protection for the Kingdom of Uganda in the Constitution of the Independence of Uganda in obvious gratitude of the critical support the colonial administration received from the kingdom. But it left a deep political scar in relation with Prime Minister Milton Obote, who eventually tried to abolish the kingdom. Thankfully, the kingdom was restored and remains in full flow today. The political dynamics in Ghana is in Ghana preferred a different outcome. Efforts to give traditional authorities a sustainable status in the independent constitutional order failed largely because, as history often tells us, we do not always appreciate the danger until we are in the grip of the elements. In Nigeria too, while the North managed to integrate traditional leadership at the time, the southern states were less obliging. It remains my view that the trust deficit created by the colonial circumstances in turn created the fault lines which gave rise to the instability of the post-independence constitutional order. We have in the past few minutes undertaken a journey into time, into the glories of ancient civilization in the mighty forests of Africa, seeing the fateful encroachment of European colonization and the eventual subjugation of the continent. And we have arrived at this point where Africa has regained a political freedom. Now, we are required to examine how traditional leadership has adapted to the new democratic societies of our time. Frankly, one would have thought, from the epic journey we have undertaken, that the issue we are dealing with could be framed differently. Namely, how far we have gone or how successful we have been in ensuring that the new democratic ideals we have imbibed are firmly rooted in the African soil. That, to me, is the elephant in the room. Or if I may, for Ghanaian political balance, the umbrella in the rain. In the half-century since the political emancipation of the continent, the independent states of Africa have undergone bewildering experiences. Military coups, civilian wars, extreme famine have intertwined to create a far more edifying image for the continent, and it cannot be outrageous to suggest that we are still groping for the correct pathway to the realization of the aspirations of torchbearers of African liberation. From all the experiences of the past 5 decades or so, a pertinent question arises whether the political dispensation and constitutional arrangements on offer are adequate or appropriate of our circumstances. If we are honest, we will have serious doubt about a system which offers little or no scope for consensus building in an environment which demands all hands on deck. A system so focused on the winning and retaining political power that considerations of national interest become subservient to considerations of political party and private pockets. Has it been an act of misplaced political indulgence for us to believe that democracy is one size fits all, or a package for simple straight transplant? It may very well be in my view. I've always had a brilliant surgeon here with me in my team, and if I didn't know, at least he would remind me that there's nothing like a simple transplant. So much has to be done to prepare the body before a transplant. Otherwise, you reach the trauma of organ rejection. As with the body, so it is with the polity. However you package the system of governance, it will only survive in the right environment. Unfortunately, we in Africa have been obliged to succumb to the proposition that merely transplanting a multi-party electoral system is sufficient to guarantee the sustenance of democracy and achieve the development goals of the state. I fear this is a grave error, and I say so not because I do not accept democracy, but because what we see only postulates a caricature of what democracy in its fullest sense should be. We have attested to the history of African civilization and governance going back millennia. We have proven how far Britain utilized and relied on the system of traditional government to ensure the success of its colonial administration. I would have thought that we would have sufficient confidence in what we have built, which has served us over the centuries, to use it as a foundation on which to erect a new governance structure, and to then explore how we infuse the new ideas into them to give us a dynamic system appropriate to our conditions and circumstances. Let us be clear. The French Revolution abolished the monarchy under the banner of liberty and fraternity, but democracy did not abolish the monarchy in Britain and the rest of Europe. Democracy was built on the solid foundations of enduring monarchy, and much of Europe and the rest of the world is the better for it. What makes it impossible to use the traditional institutions of Africa as the foundation for the construction of democratic institutions of our new independent states? It has to be a matter of great regret that even after the failures of the initial independent constitutional order, we still surrendered to the arrogant proposition that the true African creation is unworthy. I fear this perpetuates the old colonial absurdity which consigns all African achievements and creations to the rubbish heap. It is significant, it is against this background, that we can now look at the role of traditional leadership in the new democratic state. From what we have learned so far, it should be evident that with few exceptions, the constitutional arrangements of the new African democracy leave traditional leadership at the peripheries of national governance. Within that limited range, much good is often accomplished. Traditional leaders offer useful counsel and advice to elected political leaders and serve as interlocutors between them and the ordinary people. As we all know, 80% of the population of Africa lives in the rural areas. The primary loyalty of this mammoth community continues to be with their chiefs. Inevitably, their leadership is critical in the quest for development and prosperity of any country. Contrary to the misconceptions of the times, the evidence is that wherever traditional leadership is strong, they are able to maintain peace and national cohesion. The issue for contemplation, therefore, must be whether the role of traditional leadership should be limited to the peripheries or whether it lies at this stage in our evolution, at the heart of critical decision making. I hasten to add that there is no expression of personal displeasure. In the 24 years of our reign as Asantehene, we've had to deal with 5 presidents of the Republic. I can only pay tribute to all of them for their exemplary wisdom and their commitment to the common good. They've all accorded us the respect and honor, being open to counsel as circumstances demand. But that is because they have all been decent men, well steeped in the culture and traditions of their people and conversant with the influence of their chiefs. Their respect for tradition, however, does not hide the fact that the system of governance in situ places serious constraints on the role of traditional rulers in the governance of the nation. One would have thought, for instance, that the good offices of the traditional leader could be used more purposefully to facilitate dialogue between contending political actors to encourage consensus building and minimize tension and acrimony in national political discourse. That would immediately create an additional layer of the support mechanism needed to sustain national cohesion and stability. It is an option derived from our tradition which would strengthen the foundations of the democratic state, but which is not available now. We have seen how effectively it works as applied on an ad hoc basis in peace settlements. Is it not worrying that we cannot yet find scope for the application of this healthy traditional mechanism to facilitate the resolution of conflicts that adversely impact the economic development of the nation? I should at this stage deal with what has emerged as a matter of the greatest consequence to the fate of our continent. It is the regrettable phenomenon of the resurgence of military coups in Africa. In the first 2 decades of political emancipation, a spate of military coups rocked the continent and took away the first generation of leaders for the immediate post-independence era. Having gone through the experiences that followed, the continent concluded that its fate lay in the orbit of democratic governance, and so it has been for the past 2 decades. The resurgence of military intervention suggests that something has gone seriously wrong. Let me make it categorically clear that regardless of the circumstances, I do not think that military intervention offers a solution at this point in the evolution of our continent. There was a time when circumstances produced the notion that power flew out of the barrel of a gun. Those times are over and we face completely different circumstances now. The critical problem confronting Africa is the economy. From north to south, east to west, and all the joiners in the center, the burden is the economy. It is how we ensure every citizen and every family has food on the table. It is how we create jobs for our young men and women so they can stay and serve their country. It is how we find resources to provide education and healthcare for our people. It is how we apply the intellectual gifts with which God has richly endowed us to improve the conditions we inherited. It is about how we mobilize the rich cultural resources for the good of our society. The state of our economies impinges on the security of our states. Poverty and unemployment, creating stability, will present both opportunities for discordant voices. And yet, the simple truth of the matter is that there's no quick fix for economic melodies. In particular, it has to be stressed that there's no bullet that can deliver an economic miracle to any country. It has to be said, therefore, that military intervention is fraught with more dangers than it seeks to solve. It is what I consider a ride on a tiger. Jumping on the back of a tiger is an easy bet. Maneuvering the tiger, and particularly dismounting from the ride, is a risk of the cemetery that is better avoided. Anyone in the military, therefore, will be wise to think before he leaps. As they say, the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions, and however grievous the temptation, and however genuine one's motivation, some precipitate actions may produce the effect of pouring fuel on an already inflamed situation. The problem you create may be worse than what you seek to solve. Having said that, we should also be clear that what is happening is telling us something we dare not ignore. It tells us that we have to do better at managing our economies, to break the cycle of poverty and unemployment and give hope to our able-bodied youth to remain and work for the development of the continent, instead of seeking the least opportunity to escape to greener pastures as well. It tells us that we cannot continue to outsource our problems, and no African leader can sleep happy as long as there's an African boy willing to make the perilous journey of modern-day migration. But it also tells us that something is gone awry with our vaunted democratic experiment that needs urgent fixing. I do not think it signals a rejection of democracy as a system of governance. What I think it is doing is throwing into question the structures we have built within our democratic system. And that, I would suggest, reinforces the questions we have been raising about the constitutional arrangements of the African democratic states. I take issue with the notion that our traditional system of governance are wholly undemocratic, and that political parties can better relate to and represent the interests of the people. Of course, we do not question the need for political parties. In every community, citizens may have different views on social and economic issues, and people should have the right to bond together according to their beliefs, and political parties offer the necessary platform for this. However, the cultural and traditional beliefs of Africans transcend his political beliefs, and therefore, while they may split among political lines, they remain bound together by their traditional beliefs. Unfortunately, we appear to suffer from the misconception that political parties will delink people from their superstructure. Let me just give you an example of my own Asante Kingdom, whose system of governance reflects every Akan state. Contrary to the perception of old, the Akan state was not the feudal state of Europe. Every Akan citizen and family belongs to a clan, and every clan is linked directly to a traditional stool. It is the occupants of these stools who are the chiefs constituting the traditional councils. In other words, the traditional council is composed of the direct representatives of all the families within the state. In Asante, we have gone further. We've created stools for communities of residents who are not citizens. Thus, we have the Anlo community who have been traditionalized in the Asante Kingdom, the Fanti community, and the Zongo community, all represented in the Kumasi Traditional Council. The closest analogy one can make to our system would be to have representation of, say, the large immigrant communities like the African and West Indian and Asian communities represented in the British Parliament. Deliberations are open and as rigorous and intense as you will find in any state legislature, but underpinning it all is the inviolable respect for traditional ruler, traditional order, All matters of adjudication or conciliation are conducted through an open, fully documented process, and all chiefs and attendants are called to express their conclusions. The beauty of it is that every chief always has his advisors and may consult freely before stating his opinion. As an exercise in democratic practice, I will not yield to anyone on the efficacy and democratic nature of our process. We are able, through our system of adjudication and conciliation and arbitration, a myriad of litigation that would have paralyzed the judicial system. Our Queen Mothers are resolving domestic issues and leading the way to the empowerment of women at all levels. So the million-dollar question is why it is still impossible to achieve a fusion of our traditional system with the new democratic elements that will give us a strong, sustainable structure. It asks how such a fusion will impact on the gargantuan challenges of economic development. I am sure there are many objective analysts who wonder whether our economies are not beyond the narrow confines of partisan politics to manage. Indeed, there are many who now believe our problems require the pulling together of all available talent and human resources, but regrettably recognize that the realities of party politics make it impossible to achieve. The issue that arises is why traditional leadership cannot provide the platform for greater collaboration in the process of decision-making on critical issues of economic management, which overcomes the sensitivities of partisan politics. Surely, as an African setting, this is not impossible to contemplate. It is the reason I'm not overwhelmed by the enormity of the challenges facing Africa, and the reason I ask the world community not to despair about the condition of our beloved continent. We are the children of immortal Pharaoh, the children of Mansa Musa, the heirs of Otumfuo Osei Tutu, the children of King Chaka Zulu. We are what we are and what we were, and we will be what we are. Not the caricature of some proto-Europeans that history has portrayed us, but proud Africans confident of their destiny. We know where the destiny of Africa lies, where our future lies. Africa should look to its path to find its future. And that future can only be as bright as the African sun. Before some of us begin to run for cover, let me offer one assurance. The future is not clouded in revenge or retribution. It is the future of reconciliation and positivity and cooperation. Remember, my great uncle, King Prempeh I, returned from 25 years of heart-rending exile, shaking no doubt, but unbowed, and called for the people of Asante Kingdom to embrace the new reality and join together to build a new state of the Gold Coast, which is now Ghana. That spirit of conciliation has reigned with us to today. So did my dear friend Madiba Nelson Mandela, who walked out of Robben Island after 24 years to hold a hand of friendship to his captors and so heralded the collapse of apartheid. I have no doubt that African spirit of reconciliation will prevail in that future and will shine a new light through the darkness that today threatens to engulf the world in conflict. We need from the world community's understanding and support, genuine support to efforts to overcome the ravages of economic wars. In that setting, we can look forward to a strong, regenerated and developed Africa, enriched with the inspiration of its glorious past, sharing prosperity with the rest of the world in peace and harmony. And Ghana and Britain can look forward to a new era in which confidently celebrate the possibility of our historic ties and consign any of its ills to the tales of forgotten folklore. Thank you, St. Andrews, for the opportunity to share our vision of traditional Africa in this epoch.
welcome.
Our 10th anniversary. It has been a momentous journey, and I am deeply moved to stand before you today to celebrate this special milestone. I would like to extend a special thank you to all of our esteemed guests who have joined us from near and far to mark this moment. Your presence is a testament to the global reach and impact of SASM. We are truly honored to have you all.
The St. Andrews Africa Summit is a student-led and university-supported initiative dedicated to coordinating our annual summit and events focused on Africa and the African diaspora. SASM acts as a platform that brings together individuals from diverse backgrounds and disciplines, all united by a common passion for Africa. It serves as a nexus for students, faculty, and experts to engage in discussions, debates, and activities that shed light on the multifaceted dimensions and dynamics of this vast continent. From its rich cultural tapestry to its complex socio-political landscape, Africa is a continent of incredible diversity and untapped potential. SASM strives to explore, celebrate, and most importantly, understand all its dynamics.
Having His Majesty here to start out our 10th year is not just a privilege, but a symbol of the values and aspirations we hold dear at St. Andrews. We are grateful for the opportunity to learn from His wisdom and experience as we embark on the next phase of our journey.
As previously mentioned, this year is especially meaningful to us as we celebrate our 10th anniversary of the St. Andrews Africa Summit and have the distinct privilege and honour of hosting an extraordinary guest with extraordinary significance. His Majesty, King Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, the 16th Asantehene's presence here today is an immense honour and a source of inspiration to us all. We are particularly highlight his role as a peacemaker in Ghana, West Africa, and Africa as a whole. His Majesty's leadership, wisdom, and commitment to the development and well-being of his people are an enduring example of the positive impact that individuals can have on their communities and the world at large. As you have seen today, the St. Andrews Africa Summit is not just an event, it is a commitment, a platform to challenge prevailing narratives about Africa's political and economic affairs, and inspire genuine interest and desire to actively engaging in Africa's future within the St. Andrews environment. This is crucial because Africa's challenges and opportunities are not confined to its borders. In today's interconnected world, the choices and developments in Africa have far-reaching consequences globally. From climate change to global trade, from health crises to international security, Africa always plays a pivotal role. The St. Andrews Africa Summit provides us with the tools and knowledge to comprehend this role and better foster a more informed and responsible global citizenry.
In closing, let me express our profound gratitude for your presence here today. As we embark on our 10th year, we are filled with hope, determination, and a sense of purpose. We look forward to the exciting journey ahead and the positive change we can collectively create. I would like to now introduce our SASM Director, Madeline Panino.
My goodness, they're really wonderful. Oh, great job, my co-directors, Pea and Nana. Generally speaking, I think my family, friends, and team can vouch for the fact that I really never stop talking. And I can always find something to comment on or add. However, these past couple of days, beginning with meeting with the King's lovely advance team and Bradley, to greeting His Royal Majesty and the High Commission at their estate, to welcoming them at the Eden Golf Course, to sharing glasses of whiskey at the King's Barn reception, and now, finally, hearing from His Majesty King Otumfuo Osei Tutu II at this keynote. I am finally at a loss for words, so it's very good that I came prepared. I have some things written down. If I may, I will now introduce myself a bit further, my team, and this event's creator. I speak to you now as the director of the St. Andrews Africa Summit. My journey with SASM predates my matriculation here at St. Andrews. As a member of the COVID class entering university in the fall of 2020, my peers and I found ourselves joining societies and applying to committees through online networks months before our arrival. After applying and getting accepted to work as a content deputy for SASM in the spring of 2020, I ended up working with every SASM team member for over a year and a half online before meeting any of them in person. I was then working in my second year with the co-director, Callum McIntyre, who asked me to take over his role as head of content. The following spring, he asked me to be his co-director. Working closely on the content team together from the start, Callum and I became a tag team, whose sole purpose for SASM really became the heads of restoration. Summit heads of restoration. What does that mean? As a result of COVID, the natural knowledge transfers between director to director or from old team to new was non-existent and impossible. The graduated teams lost touch and therefore oversight as to who took over SASM in that 2-year limbo period brought on by COVID. Callum essentially made a long to-do list of administrative tasks in need of saving or revamping, dedicating his time as director for the summit to preserve what he could and rebuild what he could not. This includes saving our social media accounts, which possesses our outreach network and promotes our events, launching new team bank accounts, and reaffiliating our organization with the student union. It is vital to include Callum, who graduated from the university this past spring, in SASM's story, because prior to being introduced to or working with SASM's founder, who has set the organization's values, Callum already embodied the defining characteristics of SASM: passion for and dedication to the furthered education of himself and of others, planning and hosting professional events, and providing an additional space and network within our university for students coming from within continental Africa and from those eager to feel more connected to Africa. Because of Callum, SASM has persevered and persisted. Because of Callum, our current team has been able to focus on rebuilding sponsorships, on improving the production of our review magazines and other types of SASM content, such as our graphics and our marketing capacities. We have been able to create new and restore old partnerships with student groups on campus, such as those representing SASM and their respective teams today, the Roosevelt Group and the Afro-Caribbean Society. The greatest of all, SASM is now able to focus on hosting prestigious events with prominent world leaders, such as His Royal Majesty, the King of Asante, just as we did prior to COVID-19 in the winter of 2020, when SASM hosted President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana. Working with Callum has taught me about what kinds of people SASM must be composed of and who I should surround myself with more generally. SASM team members are defined by their resilience and flexibility. When hosting large events such as this, a team has to be able to get knocked down, mostly unfazed, and pick itself up again with every bit of faith that we'll recover, move past an obstacle, prepare better for the future, and perhaps avoid facing a similar mistake again. Now, when hosting large events with team members living across the world, the team needs to be patient with one another, honest with what they can commit to, and trust that despite lags in conversation or meetings, that their teammates are true to their word and accomplishing their tasks. I can honestly say that my team accomplishes all of that and more. My co-directors, Mana and Pia, both worked incredibly taxing jobs this summer. Mana facing the intense and long hours of a finance internship, and Pia working in remote areas such as the Amazon and several national parks across Kenya, dealing with very little cell reception. It was always incredible to hear the progress that these two made despite the conditions of their work and their off hours or limited time with Wi-Fi. The efficiency and efficacy of their work cannot be overstated. Midway through the summer, my logistics and operations team took on the duties of the events team, whose head could no longer work for us. My head of editorial also manages to SASM's web design and overall creative direction. He currently also sits in the back of the room, live streaming the event. My content deputy is serving as a photographer right now as we speak. My head of finance served as a caddy for the King's accompanying chiefs at the Eden course yesterday. And he has helped the head of sponsorship on her leads. The head of sponsorship has also helped with event details, such as finding caterers for future SASM initiatives. I insist that these are only a few of countless examples I have, where teammates went from graphic designers to organizers of press releases, and so on. The spirit of SASM, Callum's passion, and the team's resiliency and flexibility. These defining characteristics lead back to the founder I referred to briefly earlier in the speech. Bradley Poku-Omankwa, current acting principal coordinator of the Ghanaian Energy Transfer Office and Ghana's youngest board member of State Enterprise, dreamt the idea of SASM as a first-year student here in 2013. With the help of SASM's co-founder, Hibak Mohammed, the two composed a team, directed and launched the first ever St. Andrews Africa Summit in the spring of 2014. Since then, Bradley's been busy. Busy not only in respect to his ongoing support of and help with the St. Andrews Africa Summit affairs, but also personally in his own career. Since graduating in St. Andrews in 2017 with his bachelor's degree, Bradley procured a master's in science at the London School of Economics and Political Science, also leading their Africa Summit amidst his studies. In 2014, he founded and led as CEO of Smart Fuel, a social enterprise seeking to address specific development issues in Ghana. And he worked as a business development and trade services associate for the UK Ghana Chamber of Commerce from 2016 until 2017. He served as the country director of the Holt Prize Foundation from 2018 until 2019 and became the senior technical assistant to the Minister of Energy for the government of Ghana in 2021, eventually leading him to his current position as principal coordinator of the Energy Transition Office. To top it all off, Bradley is an incoming candidate of the MSc in Energy Systems at the University of Oxford's School of Engineering Science, which he will be reading part-time whilst continuing to lead Ghana's Energy Transition Office. Goodness. As I said, Bradley's been busy. And this list does not begin to scratch the surface of the many responsibilities, tasks, roles, and events Bradley has taken on or continued to manage over the years. Those side jobs, including his roles on SASM. Bradley has consistently kept in touch with SASM's leadership, offering us sponsorship, content, organizational, and moral support, always checking in on our progress. After speaking with him for months, attempting to coordinate this event, it was an absolute pleasure and a treat to finally meet him in person just a couple days ago. And I was also very glad to not have to call him and accidentally wake him up anymore. Now he's right there. Much more convenient. Bradley, you have made SASM in this university. Very proud. In the crowd, but I expect you have instilled great pride in those who traveled to attend or participate in this event today, including your family, friends, and of course, His Royal Majesty, the King, and his accompanying High Commission. You've made them all very proud as well. Thank you for showing the SASM teams over this past decade what it means to be a leader, and more importantly, that we must pursue and take care of our passions. For you, that has meant looking after us, for SASM, and for the further education of others. Kudos and congratulations to you, Bradley. Now, before I turn things over to Bradley, I wanted to make one more quick comment that I think student Bradley from back in 2013 could probably relate to, and I know that my teammates are all feeling right now. There's a phrase that comes to mind when thinking of the past few months of work and the past few days of meeting with our esteemed guests, and this phrase is imposter syndrome. For those unfamiliar with this term, it refers to the sensation of being a guest in your own space, feeling unnatural in a given setting, feeling as though you are an imposition or an imposter of a room or a situation. I think of all of us at some point in this past week, and we have all looked around the room, my peers and I, and we've said, what on earth are we doing here? I am not nearly important enough. I'm just a student, I am just a child. And I would like to say to you, to my peers, to my team, no. No, we are not proper adults living and leading our own lives. We are not businessmen and women yet. We are not entrepreneurs, well, some of us maybe. And we are not ambassadors. We are not chiefs or kings. In fact, we are not even graduates. Not yet. But here's what I do know about who we are. Each of my teammates has a list of accolades beyond just their work for SASM that would take an additional keynote to discuss, and probably more. Every person on my team and on the Roosevelt Group and the Afro-Caribbean Society committees has earned their place in work effort, listed resume items, but mostly passion. I ask you all, when this is over, please look at the photos, the videos, and any other content coming from this event. Look at how natural your smiles are, and pay attention to the sincerity of the smiles that you receive in return. I note this because I want you to recognize that you are not imposters. You are meant to be here with His Majesty and His delegation. Your hard work shows in how naturally you appear to those around you, how poised, professional, welcoming, kind, appreciative, helpful, and excited you have been. I am forever in all of your corners, looking out for the next opportunity to highlight the successes that each of you deliver on and are. Now, without further ado, I welcome Bradley Pokuamankwa to the stage to further introduce himself, to welcome and thank His Majesty King Otumfuo Osei Tutu.
His Majesty, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, monarch of the Asante Kingdom, Nanano, including my very own grandfather, Nana Osei Tutu, Chidomini of Kenya, Ambassador Edward Boateng, senior executives of the University of St. Andrews, representatives of His Excellency the Ghanaian High Commissioner to Britain, current leadership of the St. Andrews Africa Summit, my family and guests of this esteemed occasion. First and foremost, I would like us to give a resounding round of applause to His Majesty the King. So kindly accepting my invitation. It is not lost on us what a majestic feat that it is for him to travel this length just for us. And I can confidently say that this is the highlight of my life so far. Your Majesty, Thank you for the honor done me, my family, the St. Andrews Africa Summit, and the entire university. We are ever so grateful, Your Majesty. Almost a decade ago, after being here for not less than a couple of months, I had a rather interesting idea to boost the profile of African affairs here on campus. I gave my good friend Hibak Muhammad a call to see if she would help me get it off the ground. And somehow she obliged. Mind you, she was 2 years my senior here, of Somali Norwegian heritage and Muslim, almost the polar opposite of me. I drew the vision, she built out the operations, and before we knew it, we had recruited an army of fellow students to come on this crazy journey with us that would form the first ever committee of the St. Andrews Africa Summit, just as Madeline and her team have done today. We sold tickets outside the library in shifts during our lunch periods and went around from department to department seeking support to pull off our first summit in 2015. We are so grateful to the people that believed in us from now until then, including the late Professor Ian Taylor of the School of International Relations, may his soul rest in peace, and His Excellency Ambassador Edward Boateng, who joined us as our first ever keynote speaker back at the inaugural summit, when nobody believed in us. Thank you. And you have also been an incredible pillar of support towards our milestone event today. Thank you, Excellency. It is my utmost pleasure to be back at my old stomping grounds, and I would like to congratulate us, as we've all done today, for retaining the #1 spot as the topmost British university for the 2nd year running, beating our good friends from the south, Oxford and Cambridge, once again. Exactly 10 years ago, I found myself here as an undergraduate, beginning my first degree, now going on to my third. And if anybody ever told me at the time that I'd one day return with my president, the president of my country, and now the king of my homeland, I would have probably asked them what they drank that morning. While very unseeming, Asantehene and Scotland are quite similar in my opinion. Both traditionally founded as kingdoms, now existing within wider states, Ghana and the United Kingdom, respectively. Both nations have very strong and colorful cultures, as you can see here today, visually represented in the form of the Scottish tartan and the Ashanti kente fabrics, and share values of extended kinship, military prowess, and a deep appreciation for heritage and tradition. We even share a rather unique recipe, the infamous Scottish haggis, a sausage-like pudding made up of offal, which is a close cousin of my favorite Ashanti delicacy, boswa. We both base our lineage on clan systems, each with their own totems and symbols, and also boast of our folk music and dancing, the royal reel here in Scotland and the kitty dance of Asantehene, which you will see later today. Ladies and gentlemen, I could go on and on, but I'm not the reason why you're here today. We're here to see His Majesty, and so I thank you all once again for coming from near and far to witness this momentous occasion. And I trust that you will all take full advantage of the unique opportunity to see His Majesty sit in state. Not in the Asante Kingdom, but right here in the Kingdom of Five. Thank you. We will have the opportunity to greet His Majesty in what we call the sitting in state, and you will form an orderly line. The protocol team here will assist us and we'll file from, is it right to left? please take a seat. His Majesty will be leaving us shortly, in a couple of minutes. Just as a general protocol, everybody else must remain seated while His Majesty and his delegation leave the room. Once he is done, we must stand, but you will wait for them to leave before we can leave. Once they leave, there is a reception upstairs with drinks and some light canapes for all interested. Thank you.
Edini ye so TV GH. And so when subscribe here in a like and a comment and share my over so be dey ehwe. University wo UK Richmond Scotland e won e call by. So instruct how they come out mo. Am won e call so efi Asante Asante yes ukuma puma pemba. Asante kotoko ye bese mamwo. Asante kotoko ye bese. Asante kotoko ye bese mamwo. Ya no ukuma pema apembeba ya no asante no asante your mind sebe asante Ghana beto asante o sanetie nso wa monti ase no wati ase sanetie tini ese ye pe autonomy de ma asante man asante man tie ho ye niema insisi kuro ai ti mon support na ye mpre na Otumfuo enyina mu na ompre autonomy fama asante man de ye hwehwe no efiri korobi asante kotoko no abusuafo Scotland na e call ye no so wa hwe bi se mo hwe woni so ade ya die na efe chen sei die na efe chen sei die na efe chen sei ade efe mienka enti abusua mi am di dwumadi ho chia me ye frɛ me kwaku Alaska ene ye nkasa kese mo ankasa mo njaje asem no comment section honom mo njaje wo comment section honom na ye de ni aka mi abere beto so mo share na mo fama mfolo so nya biede enhwe ema so TV sine benya ho de de bia betra se de ensem ni biede abrewo koso na subscribe to channel, like and comment and share.
So thank you for watching the video. Thank you for subscribing to my channel, and thank you to those who are about to subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel and share and like the videos that I give you.